The end of the pandemic era is upon us. AEW is back to live touring. WWE starts their live touring this week, and one of the staple WWE events of the year is coming up this Sunday. There's a lot to get to. Let's not waste any more time. Welcome to the By Bomb Wrestling Podcast. The bomb drops now. Hello and welcome to the Pie Bomb Wrestling Podcast here on Sportinarium Radio. Thank you so much for joining us. I am your host, Chris Belcher, and you can join us every Monday and Thursday for the Pie Bomb Wrestling Podcast, wherever you find your podcast and on our YouTube channel. If you are listening to us on Sportinarium Radio, thank you for doing that. Make sure you check them out at sportinariumradio.com. You can follow them at SportinariumWW on Twitter as well. Make sure you're following there for all of the great content that they provide for you. Once again, this is the Pie Bomb Wrestling Podcast. I'm your phenomenal host, Chris Belcher, and joining me for his first episode as an official member of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast family. This guy has been an unofficial member / contributor / our most repeated guest. But this week, he is officially a part of the team. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Andy York. What's up, man?
Not much. I'm glad I finally paid my dues to make it to the big time. So I'm feeling good.
You have been called up to the main roster, my friend.
Now that makes me a little nervous.
No. That just means more pressure on you. I'm just kidding. No, man, it's great. You have been an amazing behind the scenes contributor for the duration of this podcast. You've designed t-shirts for us. You've been, like I said, our most repeated guest, whether that's a good thing or a bad. You currently hold the record for the most streams on our YouTube channel in a 24-hour period on the first episode that I ever missed, and you did by yourself. So clearly the demand for more Andy York is there.
Absolutely. Apparently it is. So I'm glad that all my loyal fans are out there somewhere. You know, I'm glad that they're there.
They are hanging out there. Andy has a podcast called The Shandy Show, which we're going to get to in a little bit. We'll tell you where to follow him with that as well. But this is your Pie Bomb Wrestling Podcast. First things first, I want to say thank you to Tom and Dave and all the folks over at Sportinarium Radio. Thanks so much for welcoming us to the team. We appreciate it. If you're listening, like I said earlier, on Sportinarium Radio, thank you so much for doing that. Make sure you're following us at PBW Podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, where you can capture all the latest news and happenings that's going on with the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. We like to share our thoughts and opinions on there. We want you to interact with us, comments. We'll read them on the air. We want to talk about what you want to hear about. This podcast is for the fans, by the fans. We're just wrestling fans shooting the breeze just like all you guys. So we want your interactions. Again, follow us at PBW Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube and on Twitch. And make sure you hop on over to ProWrestlingTees.com /PBW Podcast. Buy yourself a t-shirt. We actually have a free t-shirt giveaway going on in the month of July. Those instructions are on our fancy little ticker on our YouTube, and I will go over that again towards the end of the show. Andy, let's get to it, man. There is a lot of content to get to. We always like to start beyond the Federation. Of course, the Federation is the big house in New York, but we always like to start beyond the Federation. Let's talk about AEW, the return of live crowds. Now, I know AEW has had some fans in Daly's place for a while. Double or Nothing was an incredibly electric atmosphere. There's no denying that. But, man, the first event outside of Daly's place, I know we're a week behind. AEW is currently airing as we're recording this, but we cannot gloss over Road Rager last week and all the big things that happened. The debut of Malachi Black, a.k.a. Aleister Black. You have the debut match of Andrade. Just all kinds of crazy things that happened last week. Crazy things that happened this week on AEW. Man, just talk about the feeling of not necessarily AEW throwing stuff up against the wall, but really like giving the fans some big time stuff in their first couple of events back.
Yeah, they're really not pulling their punches for the first week back or the first time back in a live crowd, because they were in Miami last week. I think they're in Texas this week.
Yes,
If I remember
Austin,
correctly.
Austin, I
Austin, yeah.
believe. Yep.
And so, they're definitely not pulling their punches. Having a guy like Malachi Black, Aleister Black, Tommy End, whatever you want to call him, having him debut, it was a big deal. The guy is probably the most dedicated wrestler with storytelling that's crossing promotions right now with the bruise on his eye. I love details like that. And so I'm very glad that I'm glad that he's there. I think he would fit. I think he does better there in a weird way, because I think he's the kind of guy that the more creative freedom he has, the more he's going to elaborate that and show that. And so I think he's going to do pretty well in AEW, especially. I mean, he's starting off with a guy like Cody, who has been known to put young guys over, but also not put young guys over. So I'm kind of interested to see, and I also want to see how long it takes for this to become a feud over America versus a foreigner again with Cody, because it's been like that for a little while in AEW.
That's very true. I didn't even think of it that way, honestly, but that's very true. I find it interesting, man, that within a 7-day time frame, not necessarily in the same week, but within a 7-day time frame, Zelina Vega returns to one company and her husband goes to the other.
Yeah,
all within 7 days. I just find that really interesting.
Yeah, when Zelina showed up on SmackDown last week, or 2 weeks ago, last week, whatever it was. I was at the time thinking, oh, this Aleister Black's more than likely going to be coming back now, because his wife just showed up, and then nope, he showed up to AEW. So it was kind of surprising.
He did. He made a big impact, and really caught a lot of people by surprise. Of course, everybody in the wrestling business, because of the infamous WWE 90-day non-compete, which seems like there was a lot of rumors that said that they jacked his up, that they didn't switch it over from NXT. Although there were a lot of rumors before that said, hey, WWE has let someone out of their 90-day non-compete. So could have been him. A lot of people online are saying, no, that was Chelsea Green, because she showed up in Ring of Honor this past week. So could be one or the other. I don't know. But if you listen to all the things that Aleister Black has said on his Twitch streams and on his social media and stuff, there's no hard feelings anywhere. So it wouldn't surprise me, honestly, if they did let him out early. You know what I mean?
The whole 30-day contract, I think, really caught a lot of people by surprise, even inside WWE, because if you listen to Fightful Select with Sean Ross Sapp, he did a interview with Buddy Murphy, and Buddy Murphy said that they contacted him asking him about his 30-day, if he had the 30-day no compete, or if it was a 90-day. So he said they were freaking out until he said 90-day, and then you could just hear the calmness in their voice. So I don't know what the whole deal was with that, but something weird happened in this scenario, and so I don't know if we'll ever get to the bottom of it, or if we ever find out what really happened. But I'm glad that he kind of just gets to pick back up with his momentum and kind of keep rolling through. I think that's going to work out well for him.
I definitely think you're right. Let's talk about Andrade, another recently released WWE wrestler showing up in AEW, and he had his debut match. He wrestled in dress pants. And I know that I mentioned earlier that you are the host of the Shandy Show, where you talk all things DC, Marvel, etc. So it looks like, in talking to friend of the show, Jason Backowitz, that Andrade has this mob drug cartel type character similar to Black Mask.
Yeah.
In the DC universe. I think that's right.
Yeah.
So talk about that and what we might see. Give us some more insight on what we might see with Andrade's character, if that is in fact what he's basing it on.
Yeah, the Black Mask character in DC is becoming more of a popular one. In the most recent Birds of Prey movie with Margot Robbie playing Harley Quinn, the main villain was Black Mask, played by Ewan McGregor. So I think the character is definitely coming back around. But if I remember correctly, I think Andrade kind of wore the same thing before he got to WWE or got to NXT, if I remember correctly, in AAA and MLW. I think MLW is the other one that he wrestled in a lot. I think he kind of wore the same kind of get up, and I think that kind of fits his character of a guy that's like in charge of the mob or the drug cartel or whatever you want to call it. I think that fits really well for him and his persona of he should be the forefront, kind of having his goons behind him, taking care of his dirty work while he kind of rises his way to the top of AEW. So I definitely see the analysis. I definitely see the same thing of the Black Mask character as well. And, you know, I'm a big Andrade fan. I think I've said that once or twice on the podcast. I'm a huge Andrade fan. And so I think the more he gets to shine his character as well, the better. And, you know, putting him with someone like Vicky Guerrero is, I think, a brilliant choice to start off his run in AEW, because he's not the best on the mic. He's kind of hard to understand with the language barrier. And having someone like Vicky Guerrero, who is just an absolute heat magnet, putting them together, I think worked really, really well.
Yep, I totally agree, and I think it'll be interesting to see who they put with him. You mentioned having goons with him. I think it'll be interesting to see who they bring with him.
Yeah.
On you know, to help him out, because I feel like it's got to be. I don't necessarily think it needs to be somebody that he can. Be careful how I say this. Where they can feed off of him, where they're not so known guys that he has to bring up.
Right.
Because I feel like he's already behind the 8 ball in AEW, even though he is a well-known guy.
Right.
He still has to establish his own in AEW, and I feel like he needs some names around him to give him credibility. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And you know, the tag team I'm about to name is not because they're all Hispanic, because I don't think that's a big deal. But Santana and Ortiz, I think, would be great with him.
Yep.
But I even think you could put the Acclaimed with him, because I think they're starting to come up even more in AEW. They're kind of a prominent tag team. You know, if you really wanted to, I don't know how this would work. You could put him with the Matt Hardy brand. And have him be like the face of the Matt Hardy brand, but I don't know how that would. True. I don't know how that would work with Matt Hardy and Vicky Guerrero. That's kind of too many. That's too many cooks in the kitchen,
right?
I don't know.
I think you're right. I think there would be too many cooks in the kitchen in that scenario, because I feel like the Matt Hardy brand is already. I can't wrap my head around it anyway. So I wouldn't. You know, I just wouldn't want to put Andrade in all of that. But you're right. There's a lot of teams that do make sense, but I feel like it has to be an AEW established team.
And you can even do, like we were talking about before with the coffin match. You can even do Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page. Ethan Page. Yeah. I think you could do the two of them together with Andrade. I think that would be really cool. And if you wanted to, I think, you know, I don't know what his status is right now in AEW, but Christopher Daniels could come back and be a part of that as a big heel as well.
That's who I was thinking.
Yeah.
Is Christopher Daniels. That would be cool. So he could be the guy pulling the strings.
Yeah.
Like if he doesn't want to wrestle, he could be the guy pulling the strings and having Andrade, you know,
kind of like what Bobby Lashley and MVP right now on Raw. Kind of like the same concept.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Just so that we're not totally behind on AEW, let's catch everybody up on what happened tonight at, I believe it was Fyter Fest Part 1.
Yep.
You had Christian Cage and Matt Hardy in a long battle. Christian Cage getting the victory there. Miro debuted a new TNT championship in a vignette. We saw Darby Allin defeat Ethan Page in the coffin match. Darby Allin with the coffin drop through the coffin at the end of the match. That was pretty crazy. And there was a pull apart between Malachi Black and Cody. I did not get to see or hear all of it, but that's just kind of what happened. So again, I say all that to say, not just to say, hey, we're kind of giving half results here. What I'm saying is AEW is really, as I said up top, really throwing it at us with these 4 specials before they head back to Daly's place for a show in August.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think to me it's kind of smart, but also very risky at the same time. Of you're throwing your chips in all at once, and if it works out, then great. But if not, you're kind of burning yourself out before you even begin.
Yep.
In some ways, but I do like that we're not getting Black and Cody yet. I would love that if they didn't fight until like All Out. I think that would be, if you kind of stretch that feud out, make it a really big blood feud. I think that would be great. You know, anything with Britt Baker in it, I am going to be sold on, because she is probably my favorite thing, maybe my second favorite thing, because I'm a Hangman Page mark, and I'm okay to say that. I'm proud to say that. But anything with her in it, I think, we're obviously going to get Hangman and Kenny Omega very soon as well. Like, there's a lot of good areas that we're heading in, but it's kind of, you want to walk before you run, even with a live crowd back.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly, like you said, throwing all your chips in at once, then what? Because AEW does only have 4 pay-per-views in a year. That's why they do these specials. But if you're saving your big Cody and Malachi match, and you're saving your Hangman and Kenny, and you're saving all that, how do you walk before you run, like you said?
Right.
So I think they definitely have their work cut out for them. But nonetheless, if you are just now joining us, thank you for checking out the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, the show that is for the fans, by the fans. Whether you are listening live on Sportinarium Radio or you're listening to us on demand, wherever you find your audio podcast, or watching our smiling faces on YouTube, we appreciate you doing that. Thank you so much. Make sure you follow us on social media at PBW Podcast. I am at Chris Belcher 24 on all of your on your Facebooks, your Twitters, your Instagrams, all the things. Make sure you throw me a follow. My tag team partner tonight, the newest member of the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast family officially, is Mr. Andy York. You can throw him a follow at The Shandy Show. That is his other podcast where he talks all kinds of DC Marvel stuff, and we'll get into that in a little bit. Throw him a follow there on Twitter and Instagram. I know he would greatly appreciate it as well. We're going to transition to some WWE stuff. Let's hit some NXT real quick, though. The big thing, NXT this week, they didn't do it at the Great American Bash special, which is kind of surprising, but we get Karrion Kross and Johnny Gargano for the NXT Championship. If you checked out our show last week, first of all, if you haven't, please go back in our archives and check it out. If you did check it out, you know that Andy and I both predicted that Karrion Kross would come away with the championship and that he and Samoa Joe would get involved in some way, shape, or form. Andy, we were 2 for 2, my friend, but that didn't make it any less exciting,
right?
Because Kross and Joe, you still have the title in the mix. Like, man, it's good stuff. It really is. I'm excited for it.
Oh, I am too. And I've been seeing a lot of Karrion Kross hate recently for his NXT run, which I don't fully understand, because I think he has been a very strong NXT champion. And he obviously puts on great matches. And just the thought of Karrion Kross versus Samoa Joe is like making me, like, my mouth water. I'm like, I want to see that match right now.
Sure.
My only complaint with how they did it is I'm not a huge fan of Joe passing out that early on. I would much rather, as he tried to leave the ring, Karrion Kross hits the forearm to the back of the head or whatever. I think that would have been more effective, because it kind of, I don't want to say it weakens Joe, because it's Samoa Joe and it's going to be really hard to weaken Samoa Joe, but it didn't make him seem like this authority security guard, like impossible guy to get past that he's been for a long time. And I think that's a big thing.
But at the same time, Kross jumped him from behind.
Yeah.
So if you take that into consideration, okay, he passed out, but he was surprised. He wasn't ready for it.
And it makes Kross look even more like a big deal. So I guess they kind of balance each other out.
Well, and I think, to your point, Samoa Joe doesn't need to look like a big deal.
Right.
He is a big deal. He is one of those pillars of NXT. So he doesn't really need any help. I'm not saying you can do whatever to him and he's invincible. I'm just saying that they need to put Kross over. They need to put Kross to Joe's level.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, my mouth is watering for this match. I think it's going to be awesome. Talk about 2 big guys that can throw some people around. I think it's going to be great. But I'm almost as interested in seeing the way that they're going to book Johnny Gargano moving forward. Yeah. You saw this heel versus heel championship match, and it's almost like they're turning, especially with the Dexter Lumis and Indy Hartwell stuff, it's almost like they're turning the way into like the cool heels. I don't want to make the NWO or DX comparison, but it's the cool heel faction. So, man, what do you think? Do you think that's the way they're headed? I don't know.
I don't really know either. The booking for the way has been very, I don't want to say weird or bad. It's just been different, and it's kind of been hard to follow from time to time. I am a really big fan of the Dexter Lumis, Indy Hartwell storyline. I think I love Dexter Lumis. He is the weirdest guy in all of professional wrestling right
And it's
now,
awesome.
and it works.
It's great.
And it works. It's amazing. I love the fact that like Indy is following after him, and you have Candace going after Indy, trying to snap her back into reality.
Yep.
I love that Austin Theory is just a yes man, and Johnny Gargano is delusional. So like it all fits together really well. Yep. But like the booking of it is really weird. I don't think he should have won the title. I'm totally fine with him losing the title. I don't know where he goes from here though. Like you said, I don't think he goes after the NXT championship again for a little while. I don't think he goes after the North American title for a while. Maybe he gets into a feud with Kyle O'Reilly after they're done with Adam Cole. Maybe it's Gargano and Cole again. I don't really know where they're going. But I will say, because we talked about this last week, that the main event feel of NXT has been starting to feel a little stale. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to say this week, like the prospect of Bronson Reed versus Adam Cole is fresh and new and a lot of fun. Just Samoa Joe being on the screen with Pete Dunne, Adam Cole, and Bronson Reed and Karrion Kross, all four of those are matches that I would, especially Joe and Dunne. I think that match would be amazing to see.
Well, not to mention Pete Dunne got jumped in the back by Thatcher and Ciampa.
Yeah.
So you throw that in there. I mean, I like that too.
So bringing in someone like Samoa Joe freshens a lot of things up.
Yep.
For everyone else, and I think that's been very beneficial for sure.
Well, like I said, he is a pillar of NXT, and if you're talking about Mount Rushmore of NXT, that guy belongs on it. Yeah. So bringing him in, you're even putting some of the same matchups still together, but Joe's presence just makes everything feel more important.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anything else from NXT? You mentioned Bronson Reed and Adam Cole. I know we saw the first vignettes of Cameron Grimes as the Butler this week, which is hilarious. What else from NXT jumped out to you that we may have glossed over?
The random appearance of Mandy Rose, and she is now apparently no longer on the main roster, but she's in NXT full time now. So I don't know why that. I mean, that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think she can go back to NXT and work really well. But also, like the main roster women's division does not have a whole lot of bodies in it right now. And so taking people from that seems a bit off and a bit weird. But, I mean, you got to think Frankie Monet and Mandy Rose, that matchup, it's not the most exciting in the world, but I think it could be a lot of fun. Sure. Mandy Rose she's not the best wrestler in the world, but she can hold her own. She's got her V trigger that she does is not as good as Kenny Omega, but it sounds stiff as all get out. It sounds rough. So she can definitely go in the ring. It's just the weird inclusion of her. She was in a feud with Natalya and Tamina, and she was in a tag team with Dana Brooke, and all of a sudden she's no longer on Raw. It was really random and weird that she just showed up.
Well, let's talk about that weird shakeup for a minute, because it looks like that Mandy Rose is being basically traded for Aaliyah, who was in the Robert Stone brand. It seems like she's going to the main roster, which I think she's going to get eaten up on the main roster, but that's just me. Then we see, you talked about tag teams weirdly breaking up. We see Shotzi Blackheart going to the main roster, which seemingly ending her tag team with Ember Moon with no explanation whatsoever. And we also see Tegan Nox going to SmackDown last Friday night as well. Obviously, Ember Moon can stand on her own. We know that. But Tegan Nox, without wrestling any matches, goes to the main roster after coming back from her ACL. She had the weird thing where she cost Candace and Indy the tag titles last week. Are we not following up on that storyline? So you're including all these people, and you're trying to get the women's roster on the main roster a lot bigger. But some of it just doesn't make any sense. Like you said, what do you make of that?
I don't, because also like the vignette on Friday Night SmackDown ran for Tony Storm going to
Tony Storm. I didn't even mention Tony Storm.
And so I don't know if they're just doing like a trade to try to bring more women up and send some women back down that may need more time or get a different spotlight or whatever. I do agree that Aaliyah is going to get lost in a shuffle on SmackDown or Raw. I also have a feeling that Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart are going to do the same thing, unfortunately. If any one of the three can break out, I think it is Tegan Nox. I think she does have the best chance to be like a Rhea Ripley or Bianca Belair. If she can stay healthy, hopefully she can stay healthy long enough for that to happen. But I don't know. It's really weird that she just showed up and then cost them the title and then move on up to the main
Well,
roster. Maybe that was the blow off to the feud. Maybe her showing up, Vince was like, "Oh, we got to have her on the main roster now," and whatever. I don't know. It was really weird. The roster call ups have been getting weirder and weirder. It feels like.
That's true. Yeah, that's very true. With no real like explanation. Which,
right.
On one hand, that's kind of the way that it should be. But on the other hand, it's like, wait a minute, you've got some loose ends here that you haven't tied up. So, it's really interesting. I'm like you. I think Tegan Knox will be the one to break out. I also think that Shotzi has a shot to break out simply because of her character and her presence and her energy and what she brings to the table.
Yeah.
Wrestling wise, it's Tegan Knox, but character wise, Shotzi's already there. You know,
and I fully think Toni Storm is probably the combination of both together.
Sure.
And I think she also do really well, especially on SmackDown. I think that's a really good place for her to go as well. But yeah.
Well, we're talking about SmackDown. Let's wrap up a couple of news and notes from Raw and SmackDown before we preview Money in the Bank that's coming up this Sunday. But before we do that, again, this is the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, the show that is for the fans, by the fans. If you're checking us out on Sportinarium Radio, thank you so much for doing that. Make sure you are going over to sportinariumradio.com, checking out all their other shows. Make sure you follow them at SportinariumWW on Twitter. Make sure you're catching all their news and notes. Great content over there. Again, thanks to Thomas and Dave and their crew for having us on. We greatly appreciate it. You can check us out in our archives on demand every Monday and Thursday, wherever you find your podcast, and on YouTube. Just search the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Belcher. Andy York is my tag team partner for tonight. We're talking all things WWE right now. And man, you and I have talked extensively on this podcast about how good Pat McAfee has been for SmackDown. And ladies and gentlemen, the man did not disappoint this past Friday as he put his feet in a foot massager on a couch with Big E. I just about fell out of my chair. That guy's hilarious. Everything he does, I mean, he can't do anything wrong.
All of a sudden I want to see a faction and on SmackDown with Pat McAfee being the mouth of the faction with Nakamura, Big E, and I forget his name, the guy that plays the guitar.
Rick Boogs.
Yeah, I would love to see a faction with the four of them together.
I mean, it's incredible. It's so good.
I think it would be a lot of fun. Pat McAfee brings such a different style to the announcing team that has been missed for so long.
Yep.
And I think he's not the cookie cutter guy. He's not the guy that's going to go the oohs and ahs like Adnan Virk was that said the same 5 things every single night.
Right.
He changes it up and he goes with the flow and he's charismatic and entertaining and I absolutely love the guy on SmackDown.
I mean, I put this in my notes and I'm just trying to, he's not, like you just said, he's not your traditional announcer. There are some times when he plays the babyface role. Then there's sometimes when he plays the heel role. And sometimes that drives me nuts. But sometimes I'm like, well, that's okay. It's just, that's Pat McAfee. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think it's fine. I just think that everything that he's doing is great. I really do. I think, like you just said, he brings a brand new element, something that we haven't seen in a while. So I think it's really good. Looking ahead to next week's SmackDown, though, the main event, Edge and the Mysterios against Roman and the Usos, could main event any pay-per-view coming and going, a star-studded matchup. We also see Bianca Belair defending the SmackDown Women's Championship against Carmella, and this show is in front of a live crowd for the first time. So, man, really pumped to get a live crowd back. We look back at we're going to look back at the end of the pandemic era before we sign off here, but just a lot of good things happening on SmackDown, man. They're really finding a groove, especially with the crowd coming back.
Yeah, and I absolutely love everything that let me try that again. I love everything that they're doing with Roman and the Usos and Edge and even like the Mysterios coming back because you forget about all the history that's there with Edge and Rey Mysterio. And so all of that coming flooding back into this one moment is really, really cool. Yep. I fully expect to see Dominic Mysterio be like the surprise breakout guy in this matchup. I think Dominic Mysterio has everything it takes to be a guy that can step out of his dad's shadow. And I think that's going to be really hard for him. I actually had the privilege of seeing him at Survivor Series in Chicago when it was Ray and Brock, and he came out and did all those, hit the 619 and jumped off. And so, and like he looks like he moves quick on TV. He moves really fast in the ring, and he's a bigger guy than he actually looks too. So I think he can really be a breakout guy from this match. But just seeing all 6 guys in the ring together is going to be a lot of fun. Like you said, it could be a main event anywhere in the world.
It really could. Let's touch on Monday Night Raw really quick, and then we will run down the card for Money in the Bank and give some predictions. The first thing that I want to point out from Monday Night Raw is Kelsey Heather. Now, for some wrestling fans that might not know what I'm talking about, open up your internet because she's been all over the internet this week. Kelsey Heather she is now known for pulling a Rick Rude, meaning that she is the first talent in history to appear on AEW television and WWE television in the exact same night. She made her in-ring debut on AEW Dark Elevation against Layla Hirsch, and she appeared Monday night as one of Lashley's ladies. Wow.
Somebody didn't vet right in WWE.
Wow. Well,
somebody didn't do the vetting process.
I don't know that it was WWE though, because this episode of Raw was taped, last week.
Yeah, I forgot about that. So I don't know. She's smart. She's brilliant for doing that. Yeah. She's become the most talked about women's wrestler the last 48, 72 hours, whatever it's been.
Right.
She's brilliant for doing that. All the props to her, because I saw that and I was like, who is this? And I saw the pictures like, oh wow, she did pull a Rick Rude. That's brilliant. That's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to her, like you said. I mean, strike while the iron's hot. I mean,
exactly.
You're going to get an opportunity from both counties. You may as well take it. So yeah, I thought that was really, really interesting. It's one of those things where I wasn't thinking about who's the first person that's going to be able to do that.
Right.
Who is going to pull that off in this day and age? It's not something I was thinking about, but now that it's here, I'm like, well, somebody had to do it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very interesting.
I think the thing everybody was thinking about is who's going to be the first AEW person to go to WWE, which I don't think we've seen yet. Not like a big name like a Aleister Black going to AEW or Andrade or Rusev or whatever, or Big Show or Mark Henry. Like, we haven't seen anything like that yet. So I don't know who the first is going to be, but when that day happens, it's going to be a nice little shot across the bow.
Right. Anything else from Monday Night Raw? I mean, I'm not saying it was a chalk show because there was some good stuff. I mean, I've really enjoyed John Morrison and Ricochet's feud. They put on some really good matches the last couple of weeks. Anything else really jump out to you on Monday Night Raw?
I am a big fan of the Lashley segment at the end. I thought that was a really great way to make him. It was kind of like a slap in the face. I hate that he lost to Xavier Woods. Nothing against Xavier Woods, but a champion losing on the go home show to a guy that's not even in the match is just makes no sense to me. It kind of devaluates the match itself. But I do think the segment at the end, if it led to the segment at the end, then I think it was whatever, because the segment, it made you remember how much of a killer Bobby Lashley is. Yep. And I think that's something that's been missing from him for a while. Yep. To the point where I'm fully expecting him to come out on Sunday and just run through Kofi.
See, that crossed my mind. But I'm sitting here thinking, okay, Brock did the exact same thing to Kofi.
Yeah.
Can we please not do this to Kofi again?
Yeah.
So that Kofi's value is then like nobody cares.
Right. I'm not expecting it to be like a Kofi Brock situation, but maybe like a Kofi or a Brock Cena situation at SummerSlam a few years ago, where Kofi gets a few shots in for a little while, but Bobby mainly dominates the entire thing.
Right.
To show that he is the almighty WWE champion.
I was scared of the fact that I thought that he was going to drop MVP.
Yeah, and I did too.
That was really going to make me upset because that is a perfect pairing. Like, those two do not need to ever split up. Ever.
Right.
Because I don't like Bobby's promos until Monday night. I don't really like Bobby's promos, and he really needs a mouthpiece.
Yeah, he does. And MVP is the perfect guy for it.
He is. He really is. All right. Money in the Bank is this Sunday. the first live pay-per-view in front of a crowd minus WrestleMania in a year and a half is going to take place in Fort Worth, Texas. I'm pretty sure. Money in the Bank is one of those. It's really become the big five now.
Yeah.
In WWE. That's a whole other topic for a whole other podcast. You can think Money in the Bank should just be a match or a pay-per-view, whatever. Anyway, but Money in the Bank is coming up this coming Sunday. The men's Money in the Bank match, we mentioned, men's Money in the Bank match, Drew McIntyre, John Morrison, Ricochet, Riddle, Kevin Owens, King Nakamura, Seth Rollins, star-studded matchup.
Yeah.
Really is. You've got your high flyers and Ricochet and Morrison and Kevin Owens doing your crazy stuff. You've got your favorites to win the match, Drew McIntyre, Seth Rollins, maybe some dark horses in Matt Riddle and King Shinsuke Nakamura.
Yeah.
If you got to make a prediction right now, man, what does this match look like and who are you taking?
So one thing I do love is that there's only 3 former world champions in this match. So there's going to be a new world champ. Like there's a possibility of a new up and coming star coming out of this, which I think is the perfect scenario for the Money in the Bank. Sure. My gut says Drew McIntyre.
Yep.
But my heart, and I know you're going to hate this, my heart says Matt Riddle. I know you would, but listen, it makes sense for that because I maybe he holds on to it, maybe he loses it to Randy, maybe he doesn't, maybe he cashes in. I don't know, but my heart says Matt Riddle because I think him with the briefcase is different than anything we've seen for a while. Not different for a while because Brock with the briefcase was better than it ever should have been.
Yeah.
But I do think Matt Riddle has a really good shot of winning it. But, my heart says Matt Riddle. My gut says Drew McIntyre.
I don't think Matt Riddle because I think Randy Orton appears and turns on Riddle in this match. I think that's how Riddle gets eliminated from this match in one way or another.
Yeah.
Obviously, the obvious is Drew McIntyre, which is why I think they will not go that route. And I don't know why, but I'm not saying they should. I'm just saying I don't know that they will.
Right.
I think Riddle is an okay choice. I just see him and Randy and it not working out. Here's a dark horse for you. As good as stuff as they have been doing lately, what would it look like if John Morrison was Money in the Bank? Stuff that he and Miz have been doing? I mean,
yeah, the only thing that would make me think that was not going to happen is because Miz won it from Otis last year. Yeah. And so they had that briefcase just a few months ago. Yeah. So I don't know about that. I think Kevin Owens is always a great choice, especially because I think he's supposed to be going away for a little bit to kind of recover or something. That's one of the rumors I heard. So he could win, come out on SmackDown, cut a promo, and then he could be gone for a few months and you forget about it. And then all of a sudden he comes back and it makes him a big deal again. So I don't know. That's one of the best things about this year's Money in the Bank is like, it's like a rumble. When the rumble is when you don't know who's going to win. It's always the most fun. And I think this is one of those where, you've got your favorites like Drew McIntyre, Rollins, but anybody really other than Ricochet has a shot to win this.
I am going to pick Seth Rollins. And the reason I'm going to pick Seth Rollins is because I think he needs it more than anybody in this match.
Yeah.
I think that he was once the biggest star in the company as a heel and as a babyface. And I think his character over the last year and a half throughout the pandemic era, and even before that, I think people are sour on it. And I think they don't take him as seriously as they should.
Yeah.
So I think this Money in the Bank win will help them take Rollins seriously again.
Yep. Especially if Edge loses and they go that way for SummerSlam, I think that would be, you could call back him putting his head on the briefcase and going for the curb stomp there or something.
Which Edge did Friday night in their promo. You could even have that match at SummerSlam for the Money in the Bank briefcase.
Yeah, I think
the two greatest cash-ins of all time going for the briefcase one more time,
Yeah, I think that would be amazing to see that.
All right, so we transition over to the women's Money in the Bank ladder match. Alexa Bliss, Nikki Ash, Asuka, Naomi, Zelina Vega, Liv Morgan, Natalya, and it looks like, judging by the promo picture on Raw, that there's one spot left. So maybe that gets revealed on SmackDown tomorrow night. Maybe somebody shows up at Money in the Bank. And I know this is an unpopular opinion. I'm going to flash my social media handle up here for all you people on YouTube. Send your hate tweets to @ChrisBelcher24. I hope that the 8th spot is not Becky Lynch.
Oh, man.
The reason I say that is because it's obvious.
Yeah.
Give me something I don't see coming.
Yeah,
you know
I
what
agree
I mean?
with that. I agree with that.
Okay, I'm not going to hate if it's Becky Lynch. I'm not. But that's what we all expect.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just don't make it Becky Lynch.
Yeah. So I'm kind of conflicted about it too, because it is obvious, but it is kind of a story that writes itself, because a year after Asuka wins the Money in the Bank briefcase and then is awarded the Raw Women's title, it kind of all writes itself.
I know.
So if Becky is in it, I think Becky wins it. But
1,000%.
Yeah.
If she's in it, she wins.
But if Becky is not in it, I honestly think Liv Morgan wins this. And I think Liv Morgan with the Money in the Bank briefcase would be a lot of fun to see as well. Because she has worked really hard to get where she's at, and I think she's somebody that deserves it. And she's never really been given a big shot like this before, so I think she's one of those that nobody really expects to win. But I think her winning the briefcase would be a lot of fun to see.
I think letting Zelina Vega win the briefcase would be really, really interesting.
Yeah,
to see what they do there. I would love to see this version of Alexa Bliss have the Money in the Bank briefcase.
Yeah.
Because I think they could do a lot of cool stuff with that too. However, my pick is going to be the surprise eighth person in the match, and that's Sasha Banks.
Oh, okay. I thought you were about to say Charlotte Flair, and I was like,
nope.
No, please don't do that.
Nope.
Please don't have Rhea and Charlotte first, and then Charlotte is the 8th entrant in the...
I know, right? No, I'm picking Sasha Banks.
Yeah, that's a good shot. That's a good.
I think she comes back. I think she's in it, and I think she wins it.
Yeah.
Speaking of Rhea and Charlotte for the Raw Women's Championship once again, are you okay with seeing this for 3 pay-per-views in a row? I thought they would hold this off to SummerSlam, but clearly they're not.
Yeah.
Does Charlotte finally win the title from Rhea here? I
don't know, and this is going to sound really bad. I don't really care at this point. Like this is a feud that I just hope ends. And I love Rhea. I think Rhea is really great, and Charlotte's really great. I don't really care who wins on Sunday. If I'm real honest with you,
I was all for this feud, honestly.
Yeah.
If you listen to this podcast and previous episodes, when we came out of WrestleMania and Rhea was a champion, I said, boom, Rhea and Charlotte, the feud we were supposed to get last year.
Yeah.
And we didn't get it. I was all for it, but now I'm just like, you're killing me.
Yeah.
You're not making it interesting.
Whoever wins, it's time to move on from the feud.
Yep.
And set up something different for SummerSlam.
Yep. It definitely is. Raw Tag Team Championship on the line. AJ Styles and Omos against the Viking Raiders at Money in the Bank. I think I said it on this podcast not long ago. I thought the Viking Raiders are the team to dethrone AJ and Omos, and I think that's where we're headed, man. I think the Viking Raiders win the titles here.
Yeah, my only thing is with a crowd being back and going into SummerSlam, I think it's a bigger deal if AJ has a belt going in.
Sure.
And so I think they may keep the belts on Styles and Omos, but I don't know where they go if they win. Like, I don't know who's coming up next. And so I do think the Viking Raiders do win this as well. But I just hope they have something interesting for Styles for SummerSlam at least.
Yep, me too. Definitely me too. Okay. WWE Championship, we hit on it just a few minutes ago. Bobby Lashley and Kofi Kingston. You're picking Bobby Lashley in this match, safe to say?
Yeah.
Yep, me too. Hands down. Okay, so that being said, if we're booking SummerSlam for Bobby Lashley, take out Brock Lesnar because that's the obvious dream match.
Mm-hmm.
Who do you put in a ring with Bobby Lashley for the championship?
I have no idea. It depends on where it falls, because if the takeover that's supposed to happen with Cross and Joe or whatever, if that takes place before, then I could see Karrion Kross coming over. If Joe wins, I could see Cross coming over and facing Bobby Lashley for the WWE Championship. But other than that, I don't really know who is good enough to face him, because there's not really anybody else on Raw, unless you want to do AJ Styles. But
that's what I was getting ready to say.
Yeah, And I think I don't think we've seen that actually. So I think that would be I think that would be good and different, but still, it's not as big of a SummerSlam match as I would anticipate they would have for Bobby. But I still think it would be really good.
Sure. I totally agree. I think AJ would be the way to go if you're not adding anybody or you're not bringing anybody over. I think the obvious choice is AJ. You drop the tag titles at Money in the Bank. You've got AJ challenging. He's got almost beside of him. So that's his like, hey, I may be a lot smaller than you, but I got this big guy, whatever.
Yeah.
So I think that could be a way to go. But then that goes back into what we were talking about with Gargano and Cross, the heel versus heel. Do you really want to do that on a big show like SummerSlam? Yeah. I think with Bob Lashley, I think it could bring the Fiend back. Maybe.
It's just the Fiend in another title match would be weird. Not weird. Just something I don't want to see. I don't want to see him to lose because he's been gone for so long. And the Randy Orton feud really put a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth with the character and with the storyline of the feud. I think that if they do the Fiend versus Lashley, I think that backs them back in the corner that they were in Hell in a Cell a few years ago.
I'm just thinking as far as star power goes and as far as a big match is concerned, because you're right. Bobby Lashley has had an incredible 2020 and 2021. He really has. So he deserves a big match.
I'm going to throw another name out there, and I pray I'm wrong.
Uh-oh.
Goldberg.
You know what? I think you're right.
And I hope I'm wrong.
And I was talking to Jared Justice, my brother from another mother, who also co-hosts this podcast with me. I was talking with him on the phone the other day, and everybody's been talking about Roman Reigns versus John Cena at SummerSlam, and that there's conflicting reports that Cena's a lock for SummerSlam, and then there are some reports where he took on this new role, so his coming back and forth from Canada and the US, the quarantine and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So he might not be able to make it. So I said, okay, well, the obvious insertion is Goldberg with Roman. But if they can work Cena out, then boom, Goldberg and Lashley.
I don't want to see Goldberg in the main event of SummerSlam again.
I know. Listen, I know you don't. I know I don't.
But
I know
casual fans would love it.
That's what I was going to say. I know the smart marks don't, but I know that Goldberg will sell tickets in that stadium.
It's just, if he's in it, it's whatever. They need to do it like they did the Drew Goldberg at the Rumble, and let Goldberg lose because it's Goldberg. Goldberg losing to Bobby Lashley is not going to hurt the reputation of Goldberg. I promise you.
Right.
It would make Bobby Lashley feel even more like a big deal if he did eke out the win. It's just, there's always the chance with guys like Brock and guys like Goldberg where the worst timeline would happen, and it normally happens with those guys.
Right. Oh, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. We mentioned Roman Reigns just a minute ago. He is defending the Universal Championship at Money in the Bank against Edge. Any chance Edge wins this match?
No, because I could see, like we talked about a few weeks ago, I think I could see Seth Rollins getting involved here, or Roman beats Edge. Edge is in the ring by himself. The crowd starts to clap like they do for him being back, and then Seth comes in and attacks him. But I don't see Edge winning here at all, especially with the momentum Roman has and everything going on. To me, it wouldn't make sense to take the belt off of Roman when he is this hot right now.
I think. And this would be the scenario for Edge to win. I think Seth could come out and try to get involved, and it backfires, and he costs Roman the match, and Edge wins.
Yep.
Therefore, Roman is now after Seth for costing him the title, and after Edge for the title. So if Cena doesn't work out, there's a triple threat match for SummerSlam.
Yeah, and I think that would be a great way to go. It's just, it depends on if Seth wins the Money in the Bank or not, because I don't necessarily want to see Seth in the Money in the Bank match or Seth in a WWE Championship match if he has the Money in the Bank briefcase. It doesn't really make sense. My thing is, I think it would be a lot of fun if the Cena thing doesn't work out. I think Reigns, we talked about it, I think a long time ago, but Reigns Balor would be a lot of fun too at SummerSlam. I think if you brought back Finn Balor, if you brought back the Demon Finn as well, I think that would be a lot of fun to see that as well. Just something different for Roman, I think would be a good way to go, because we've kind of seen him with Edge a lot. We've seen him with Mysterio now for a little while, and I think it's time that as soon as this feud's over, whatever happens, it's time to move on to go somewhere different from here on out.
See, I think the Balor thing, I think that's his fall opponent. So after SummerSlam, I think that because Cena, if Cena does work out, he's not staying any longer.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So I think after SummerSlam, that's when you insert Balor with Reigns. Because I'm like you, there might be a slight chance that Edge wins this match, but it is very, very, very small.
Yeah. And and booking wise, it wouldn't make sense in a lot of ways.
No, not yet. So Roman's keeping the title. He's going to truck on all the way through. Well, Andy, as I mentioned a little bit ago, man, you are not going to be able to be with us on next week's podcast where we're going to cover the end of the pandemic era extensively. Mm-hmm. So officially, we have live crowds back in AEW. WWE's coming up this weekend. So I want to get your thoughts on, man, the pandemic era as a whole. We're about a year and a half into this with no real live crowds. I mean, we've had some here and there.
Right.
But what stood out to you? What storylines stood out, you know, looking back on it? When you look back, ultimately, you think on the pandemic era, what do you think stands out to you?
Well, one of the first things that stands out is that both AEW and WWE did the best that they could in the situation. They didn't do everything perfect, but the Thunderdome was a smart idea to make it to where it wasn't hollow and boring or weird. And it felt weird for the first couple of weeks and months when there was nobody in the arena and they were just wrestling going back and forth, except for the time that Triple H was on commentary. That was a lot of fun.
That was genius.
That was genius. But other than that, like bringing the Thunderdome in was a really great idea. We got a lot of cool sets and pyro with this. They were able to do a lot more around the arenas in some of their last man standing matches and things. So that was a lot of fun. If I had to say like the MVP of the pandemic era for SmackDown, it would definitely be Roman Reigns. I think Roman Reigns is the guy that really carried the entire company on his back through this entire thing. And it's funny that he's the guy that they've been wanting to carry the company and fans reject it. And now that there are no fans love it. And so I think it's very poetic how that all took place. And on the Raw side, you know, I think he's getting a lot of hate here recently, but Drew McIntyre carried Raw for weeks and months by himself, really, through the COVID pandemic as well. So I think those two guys really deserve the props during this entire time. And I think we're going to look back on this time period as maybe the weirdest time in WWE history for audiences and fans and wrestling. But it's given us some great moments that we would never got if this never happened. Right. Like the WrestleMania match with John Cena and The Fiend. We would have never got anything like that. With the Boneyard match with The Undertaker and AJ Styles, like that. A lot of it was a lot of fun stuff that we'd never seen before. A lot of it was swings and misses, like the Strowman Fiend wrestling swamp match thing. That was a little weird, but there's a lot of great memories looking back on it. And I think we're going to look at it very fondly in the next couple of years, looking back on this time.
I think so too, man. I really do. I think it was at times it was hard to get through just because we're traditional wrestling fans and we've grown to expect certain things that we were not able to get.
Right.
But looking back on it, I'm like you, man. I think there's a lot of underrated things that happened in the pandemic era that we might be able to go back later on and look through with a different set of lenses,
right,
to see how good some of that stuff was. You talk about some of the great matches that happened, man. Roman Reigns and Drew McIntyre Survivor Series was fantastic, man.
Yeah.
Just Seth Rollins versus Dominic Mysterio at SummerSlam was so incredible. You know, you look at the Edge and Randy Orton matches. You look just all of those things. You know, Daniel Bryan and Roman Reigns from SmackDown earlier this year. I mean, just some incredible stuff. AJ Styles and Daniel Bryan for the Intercontinental title. Man, just a lot. I could go on, but I'm probably going to change my mind by next week. But if I'm putting myself on the spot, if I'm saying an MVP of the pandemic era, on Monday Night Raw, I'm going to go with Randy Orton. I think he did some really good stuff, especially early on with Edge, with Drew, and with the Legend stuff that he was doing. I think he did some really good stuff. And then on the SmackDown side, I think Roman was great, but I think you got to give it to Bailey. As much as she talks
Yeah.
about it, I think Bailey really. You look at the stuff she did with Michael Cole, and just the way that her and Sasha carried all that through. And man, I think she's the MVP on SmackDown side.
Yeah.
All right. One of the things that we always do here on the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, if you're just now joining us and this is new for you, we close our shows every week handing out our high spots and turd sandwiches of the week, the highs and the lows this week in professional wrestling. Andy, I'm going to throw to you first. Your turd sandwich of this week, what do you got?
So my turd sandwich and my high spot actually go hand in hand.
Oh, this is good.
Which we kind of talked about a little bit earlier. My turd sandwich of the week is Bobby Lashley losing to Xavier Woods. That is something that I'm not going to say should never happen, but when Bobby Lashley is the champion the week before the pay-per-view, it should not happen. And so I definitely think that was a boneheaded decision this week for sure, having Bobby Lashley lose that.
I totally agree. All right, and your high spot, since you said they go hand in hand.
Yeah, my high spot then would be the ending segment of Raw with Lashley and MVP, and his promo that he cut was serious and sincere, and he was ready to get back on track, and he looked like he was ready just to kill somebody in that moment. And him throwing the chairs and spiking stuff, couch? It was just the couch. He reminded everybody of the threat that he is and the killer that he is. I think that, it was the perfect way to end Monday Night Raw heading into the pay-per-view to remind us that he is the guy that beat Drew McIntyre 4 or 5 times, and he is the guy that's going to destroy Kofi Kingston on Sunday.
I mean, we talked about how good of a 2020 and 2021 that Bobby Lashley had, but to me, that's arguably the best thing he's done the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that promo, it's like, oh crap. Yeah. It's about to hit the fan. This guy means business,
Yeah.
My high spot, we just kind of talked about it, is the end of the pandemic era. Again, we're going to talk about it more next week, but I already, like in my soul, feel a sense of normalcy with wrestling. Yeah. You know what I mean? So to me, it's a high spot that we're getting back to what we feel is normal. I mean, I'm not saying anything negative about the pandemic era. It's just, we'll look back on it. We'll see how successful that it really was, but we'll get a better sense of that once we get crowds back.
Yeah.
And then my turd sandwich, again, send your hate tweets to @ChrisBelcher24 because I will take them and I will defend this one to the end of the earth. My turd sandwich is JR's commentary on AEW. I've said this before and I'll say it again. He's not as good as he once was, and unlike Toby Keith, he will not be good once as he ever was.
Yep.
He's hurting AEW's product.
Yeah.
He's putting down the high spots. He's mispronouncing guys' names. He's calling Excalibur by his real name on the air. The catchphrase tougher than a $2 steak is old.
Yeah.
Stop using it. Bully Ray has been very open on Busted Open Show about how you can't criticize JR because he's a legend. I beg to differ.
Yeah.
Because everybody criticized Michael Jordan when he came back and he played for the Wizards.
Yeah.
He's still the greatest of all time, but that doesn't mean he should have come back.
Right. I totally agree. I think JR is hurting now more than helping. I think having him at the beginning was smart, getting name brand, getting everything started. I think that was smart to have him on there. But I fully agree now. He is hurting more than helping. My only thing is, who do you replace him with?
I don't think you have to. No, take it back. Chris Jericho.
Take him off full time?
Yep.
And let him. I thought about him. I don't know about Paul White. I don't know how he would do as a head guy.
From what I've heard of him, he's pretty good.
Yeah.
I've listened to a couple of his things. It's pretty good. I would take JR off and put Jericho on.
Yeah.
And I know that Jericho is very much active. Jericho is very much still wanting to do this, but I mean, just some of the stuff that he was doing a couple of weeks ago on commentary, it was miles better than JR. And you mentioned it. I will not. I mean, you're absolutely right. Name value.
Yeah.
100%. Absolutely. But when your most recognized announcer is putting down some of the best spots of the show, you got issues.
Yeah. And when he calls it WWE Dynamite, that was
WWE Dynamite, getting mad at people for diving over the top rope.
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
I'm going to throw another name out there, and I hate to be that guy, but I think it would be a great way to troll the fans to bring him back in a commentary style. CM Punk.
Oh, you talk about people losing their mind.
And I think it could be something that you do for only a short period of time. But him on commentary on Raw when he was the third man or whatever for a while was some of the best stuff, and I absolutely loved it. And so I think he is one of those guys that you could bring back in, let him do his own thing. Obviously, if he does come back in, he's going to wrestle at some point. You can't have CM Punk come in and not wrestle. But I think that would be a great way for him to be like, I'm back. I'm not wrestling, but I'm back. I think it would be a kick out from the Fox thing he did. I think it would be great.
Well, I mean, it's almost similar to Samoa Joe coming back as the enforcer of NXT. It's like, hey, I'm not wrestling, but I'm here.
Right. You know? Yeah. I think that would be great.
Well, Andy, as we put a bow on this episode, we've teased it throughout the show. You are the host of the Shandy Show, covering DC, Marvel, all those things. Tell everybody where they can find your podcast and what's coming up next.
Yeah, so we actually just started back our podcast and YouTube channel this past Friday. Me and my wonderful wife reviewed the brand new Black Widow movie that came out this past weekend. So we sat down and talked about it. So you can definitely go check that out on our YouTube channel, The Shandy Show. We are also on all the major streaming podcast platforms, your Google Play, Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Music, all of that stuff. You can find us there. But yeah, we like to talk about all things DC, Marvel, Star Wars, all that fun stuff. We actually have an episode coming out this Friday where we're going to be talking about the Loki show. It just ended yesterday or today, really. The final episode came out today. So we're going to be talking about that, diving into all that, going into our insane theories of where we think the MCU is heading next. It's a lot of fun. So if you're into Marvel, DC, Star Wars, anything else, really, come check us out. We will definitely bring you in with open arms and let you enjoy the sanity with us. That is all thing comic book stuff.
It's good stuff. The review that you and Katie did this past week, I haven't seen the movie, haven't read anything about the movie, but I checked out the podcast. It was very entertaining. I enjoyed myself. So
she was definitely nervous going into it, and then halfway through, she was just a pro at it. And I was like, "This is exactly. Great. I told you you'd be fine with it."
It's great. It works out. So go check out the Shandy Show. If you are new to us, please make sure that you are checking us out every Monday and Thursday, wherever you find your podcast, and on YouTube. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a 5-star review. We greatly appreciate it. Speaking of hitting that subscribe button, that is the first step to entering our July t-shirt giveaway. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Number 2, take a screenshot of proof of your subscription. Number 3, share that screenshot on your favorite social media platform. That's Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. Tag us. We are at PBW Podcast, and you will be entered to win a free Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast t-shirt. If you are already subscribed, all you got to do is share the link to your favorite episode on our YouTube channel. Go to the YouTube channel, share that link on your favorite social media platform, tag us. You are entered as well. At the end of July, we are going to give away a free Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast t-shirt. Could look like this, could be a little bit different. You just never know. But we're going to give away a free t-shirt, so make sure that you subscribe, share it on social media, tell your friends why you're listening to the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast. This is the show that is for the fans, by the fans. We're just a couple of fans chilling, talking about wrestling, talking about our favorite form of sports entertainment, and we love to have you guys on the ride with us. So interact with us on social media. Give us your comments, your feedback, your questions. We'll read them on the air. We love the participation. That being said, make sure you participate with us this Sunday, right after Money in the Bank goes off the air. I will be on doing a live stream recapping everything Money in the Bank. I'd love to have you join us on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook page. Interact with us, comment with us. It is a great time every time we do a live show. We appreciate it. We also appreciate Tom, Dave, and all the guys from Sportinarium Radio for having us this week. Thank you so much. If you are listening on their platform, make sure you give them a follow if you haven't already. They are at Sportinarium WW on Twitter. They're at Sportinarium on Instagram. Make sure you check out sportinariumradio.com for all their other great content, some really great sports talk over there. You will enjoy it if you're not checking it out already. I'm flashing that up on the screen for everybody watching on YouTube. So make sure you check that out, take that down, do all those things. Andy, the newest member of the family, thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate it. I look forward to many more good shows with you.
Oh, absolutely. And I won't be there Sunday for the live stream, but I'll be there in spirit and in the comments. So definitely check that out for sure. I'll be there to heckle Chris as he's doing the live stream.
I appreciate that very much. All right. For Mr. Andy York, my name is Chris Belcher. Make sure you follow us on social media at BBW Podcast. Andy, I'll flash this up one more time, is at The Shandy Show. I am at Chris Belcher 24. This has been the Pipe Bomb Wrestling Podcast, and we will catch you guys down the road.